year was 1930. The road was Route 66. The truck was a 1923 Dodge. The family was the Slys. Andy Sly, the father. Mattie Sly, the mother. Cleta May Sly, the sister. And then you have Kathleen. She was the little sis. There she is on the bottom row. And then you had Leonard Sly up at the top, a.k.a. Roy Rogers. There's Kathleen again, standing up in the middle. To the left of her older sister, Mary, Kathleen was little sis. The story we're about ready to tell you today is about little sis, Kathleen. The Great Depression had a way of moving people from here to there. In this case, from the Ohio River area to California. This was during the Great Depression in the early 1930s. There were makeshift camps, broken down jalopies along the way, starving families, exploited workers, old men and old women who died along the road trying to get to California. They were buried in the fields. These are the signs of the times. But the father, Andy Sly, is optimistic. He tells his son on their way to California, "Our luck is sure to change out here, boy." And if you're familiar with Roy Rogers, then you know the old man was right. But for a perspective of the time back then, a decade prior, the music was blasting during the roaring 20s, and everyone was forced to dance. But this is now the early 1930s, and the music has stopped, and there's not enough chairs for everybody. They're hard times. That's why they called it the Great Depression. But lucky for Leonard, he has some songs in his head. He has the beat of the drums in his soul, the rhythm in his veins. It will be this inner music that gets him through the hard times. You see, at that time, the Federal Reserve bankster said, "It's our money, and we will manage it the way we please." And then you had Leonard, a.k.a. Roy Rogers, and he said, "Well, it's my music, and I'll play it the way I please." It was a perfect relationship, and the rest is history. But what about little sis? What was the gift? It was a one-of-a-kind item, destined to be destroyed after a few uses. What was it? It was an electrical transcription, a.k.a. a platter, a.k.a. an E.T. to the radio insiders. You see, Leonard Slys had become Roy Rogers, the singing cowboy. He was getting famous. His first wife was this lady right here. In 1933, he married Lucille Ascolisi. But the marriage failed. It lasted between 1933 to 1936, and that's the time frame we're talking about here. Roy Rogers was just breaking into the entertainment industry. Like I said, he came from Ohio in 1930, and he came to Hollywood. He was going to make it famous. He changed his name to Roy Rogers. About this time, or actually before this time, he signed up with a musical group called Uncle Tom Murray's Hollywood Hillbillies. Yes, what a name, what a group. Yeah, so he didn't get paid when he played for the Uncle Tom Murray's Hollywood Hillbillies. He never got paid because Uncle Tom told him the experience is much more valuable than the money there, kid. So anyhow, he went on to form another band called the Sons of the Pioneers. Sons of the Pioneers. And that's where our gift comes into play. What was the gift? Again, the gift was an electrical transcription. Now, many of you may not know what an electrical transcription is. It's a special type of record. This record, this gift here, there it is in the yellow envelope, it was a 33 album. but it's a little different. It was made just for the radio stations. Yes, it was a better quality. At the time, all the normal people would go out and buy a 78 record. The 78 records, the quality was not very good. But this record was a 33 RPM. It was made especially for the radio stations. It was cut with a standard size groove. That would be the same groove that the 78 RPM records would have, but this was at a 33 RPM. This was the best quality vinyl out there. They made them on many different types of materials, acetate and every type of material you can think of, even glass at one time, but these were the best. They were 33s. They were called electrical transcriptions, aka maybe a platter, or in the business they called them an ET. This record was only to be played by the radio station. Okay, it's 12 inches in size, but sometimes they made them 16 inches in size. Again, this record, there it is, To Little Sis from Roy. This would have been about 1935. He technically changed his name to Roy Rogers around 1937 when he got his contract with Republic Pictures. But as you can see, even up into like 1935 and 36, he was thinking about changing his name to Roy Rogers. As a singing cowboy, when he got signed on to Republic Pictures in 1937, he got paid $75 a week in 1937. This is still during the Great Depression. The Great Depression really did not end until World War II got up and running. World War II put all those boys to work. It also killed quite a few of them too, but that's a whole different story. Now, why is this gift so important? Why does it have historical meaning? The reason why is because, as we said before, these electrical transcriptions were only given to the radio stations. Now, the radio stations sometimes did not play them very many times, and they went back to the recording studio that leased them out to the radio stations. This record, this electrical transcription, it looks like a regular record, but it's not. The radio stations did not own that ET. No, the recording studio that made it, they owned it, and they leased it out to the radio stations. After the radio stations used them, they went back to the recording studio, and the recording studio destroyed them. Many of them were destroyed, but this one was saved because Roy Rogers gave it to Little Sis. So by now you're probably thinking, well, let's listen to it. Let's hear this gift that Roy gave to Little Sis. Well, this electrical transcription has about 6 songs on them. 5 of them are not in the public domain yet, but one of them is in the public domain. It is a Negro spiritual. I actually thought about calling this tale, An Appalachian Hillbilly Goes to Hollywood to Sing Negro Spiritual. But then I reconsidered the day later, and I changed the title to A Gift to Sis. I think that's a little better. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and hear one of the songs on this special gift to Little Sis. It's a Negro spiritual. So, the biggest criticism when it comes to Caucasians singing Negro spiritual songs is they don't have the soul or the pain in their heart to pull it off. They lack the personal suffering of uncontrollable circumstances that are out of their control. This is true of any East Coast or West Coast white guy trying to sing a Negro spiritual, for he lacks the painful, poor childhood needed to pull it off. Now, how about this? Now, think about this for a moment. How about the poor, white, Appalachian hillbilly? Now, he grew up in a similar environment of the poor African Americans. He grew up on the Appalachian foothills. That is the Ohio River, stretching from Cincinnati, Kentucky, all the way up the river to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All up that river, you got on the Appalachian foothills, you got these poor hillbilly boys, and they grew up in a pretty similar circumstances of the poor African Americans. Sometimes they grew up right together, rubbing elbows with each other. Okay, so these poor Appalachian hillbillies with a touch of this uppity class syndrome that some of them have, they might be able to pull it off. You be the judge here. Okay, you be the judge. Remember, we're talking about Roy Rogers here. Roy Rogers was an Ohio River barefooted Appalachian foothill hillbilly boy before escaping to California in 1930. So here he is. We're going to give you Roy Rogers. Here he is with the Sons of Pioneers, and they're singing an old Negro spiritual. What do you think? Do they pull it off? Because I think they do. I think they have the soul. I think they had what it took to pull off a song like this. And now we get a little interesting. We're going to be listening to All God's Children's Got Shoes. Children's. All God's Children's Got Shoes. We're talking about a Negro spiritual here. They were all the rage in the 1920s and 30s. People going into the hills of Arkansas, the Appalachian Hills, looking for those Negro spirituals down in Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee. Remember what inspired Elvis Presley was those Negro spirituals. I mean, you got to get the rhythm and the music in your blood, and that's what Elvis did. For God's sake, I won't go off on it. We're not going to go off on it here. But All God's Children's Got Shoes. This is a spiritual song of immense reputation. Okay, we don't know. It's just a master recording. Without further ado, why don't we just put it on here and jump right to it? Why don't we just jump right to it? This could have been overlooked. This treasure could have been overlooked by somebody who does not have the historical background and education that I have. I will not go into it. Let's turn this on. It's a 33. We're going to go phono. Push the phono button. And let's get to it. All God's Children. Let's start with All God's Children. Okay, we're talking about the Sons of the Pioneers in the early days, 1933 to 1937. I found out something interesting about this record. It doesn't start on the outside edge here. The outside edge here, that's not where the record starts, on the inside. So watch this.
You got wings, all God's children got wings. And when I get to heaven, gonna put on my wings, fly all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven, everybody's talking about heaven, may go and bear heaven. Heaven, gonna fly all over God's heaven. I got a heart, you got a heart, all God's children got a heart. When I get to heaven, gonna take up my heart, play all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven, everybody's talking about heaven, may go and bear heaven. Heaven, gonna play all over God's heaven. I got shoes, you got shoes, all God's children got shoes. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my shoes, walk all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven,
nice. You notice how it went back. It started here and it's going this way. This is a backward record, a reverse record.